My name is Norton, and I'm going to start off by showing a film. I think if I could, oh, there we go. We made a nice little intro thing. Okay, so it's a typical birth in the 1960s. The father is in the lounge down the hall with the other fathers, probably smoking. The mother is duking it out with Mother Nature down the hall from the doctor. The father's waiting to hear back whether it's a healthy baby or boy or girl. But actually in this one, not my dad. My dad is filming this. And he's filming this. He is not a filmmaker. He is a businessman. I don't know why. I'm not quite sure. He felt moved to document this. Maybe it's because I'm his 6th child and he wanted to shake it up a little. But he's in there. My mom is very tolerant, as you can see very soon. Don't worry. It's actually, he filmed all of it, but you'll see I spare you some of the details. So I was thinking about this in terms of my talk, and I was thinking that he was the first father that doctor let into the delivery room with a camera. There's my mother. Wow, she's really tolerant. She's got like the lipstick, I don't even know. Anyway, so there's this idea where at this time that my father is doing this, he's pretty much a freak, right? There's no one doing this. And now I look back on it and I think he was a visionary, because I really would challenge us to think about any birth going on in the United States right now that's not documented in some way. So I thought that was really incredibly interesting. I don't know if this is kind of staggering, so what do you think? And I think about that in terms of really, I mean, I guess I fancy myself not that old, but really this was not that long ago. So 30 years later, you missed the cute part where they kiss at the end, so I don't even know. And it is a very graphic film. I don't even know what that's about, but I spared you that. So 30 years later, Philippe Kahn, who's a tech entrepreneur who some of you may know, tweets a photograph, takes a picture on his phone of his brand new daughter, Sophie, this is in 1997. And this is actually the first photograph that was ever taken on a cell phone and transmitted wirelessly. He sent it to about 2,000 family and friends. And this was in 1997. Just think about this. This really astounded me when I delved into it. So we're talking in 30 years later, it's the first one. And now, of course, we all know where this is going, right? 400 billion pictures were taken last year. And the more interesting part of that is that represents 10% of all the pictures ever taken. So 10% of all just think about that. 10% of all the pictures ever taken were taken last year. So it's an amazing, we've heard a lot of other speakers today talk about data, and I think this is about, I don't think that the hunger for connection and telling stories is not new, obviously. This has been true of mankind since we began. But the availability and the accessibility to do that, to me, is really astonishing. And I find it really, really exciting. So, for example, here's a picture of a kale scramble I made. I photograph a lot of food. That's a whole separate TED Talk. And I sliced the kale up really thinly, and I sauteed it. And I sent this to my sister in Los Angeles, and a few seconds later, she saw my sister Celia, who really loves food. She calls herself Mrs. Mark Bittman. She saw this a few seconds later. I don't even know, my brain doesn't have the capacity to know sort of how that happens. Many of you in this room probably could tell me. I do not know. I find this really amazing that I can connect with my sister in Los Angeles and show her what I ate for breakfast a few seconds later. This is now sort of become part of our lexicon. We just take it for granted. I find that really astonishing. So these are some interesting facts. More than half of all internet content is video, which is where I'm moving to talk about video. More than half of all internet content is video. I mean, that is just amazing. Every month, 4 billion hours of video is viewed on YouTube. 4 billion hours. And each year, 350 million videos are tweeted. So 350 million videos were tweeted last year. This is an amazing piece of information. I don't even know where to begin to talk about the implications of all of this, of the moving image media. And I don't even know if it's good or bad. All I know is when you delve into it, I looked at how YouTube was started, which, by the way, was 2004. I mean, it's 2013 now. Just think about that. It's really not that long ago. I like to look at my watch. And in 2004, these three guys, I don't remember their names. It doesn't matter. I'm sure they're very wealthy now. There were two reasons that legend has it that it was started. I don't know if anyone knows this. So one reason was they were at a dinner party, and they videotaped it, and they were frustrated because they were unable to email that video to any of their friends because of the limitation in attachment size. So they were frustrated about that. And then the other partner, the third guy, heard about this Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction and was incredibly frustrated that he couldn't find any image of it, any video of it online. Okay, we could just all die of pride that Janet Jackson breasts launched YouTube. And so out of that frustration, YouTube was founded. So I think I found that very humorous and interesting. And so 5 years ago, I started an organization called Stone Soup Films, which is a nonprofit film collaborative that brings together volunteers, film and television professional volunteers, to create and donate promotional films to nonprofits that can't afford it. So there are a couple reasons why I did this. One was I was insane because I had never managed a nonprofit before, so also a separate TED Talk. I was incredibly drawn to storytelling and the idea that stories had a unique way to connect with people. And also, I was very much called to service in Washington. This is my hometown, and this city is very divided, and there was a lot of suffering, and I just felt like there was a real disconnect between different sides of the city. And so what happened is that a lot of the roots of this started with, I worked in the White House communications office in Bill Clinton's first term, and part of my job, I worked on crime and drug policy. And part of my job was we were trying to pass a crime bill at the time, and there's a lot of kind of too muchness of this, right, where you have an assault weapons ban and all these things you're trying to pass, and these are, as we know, even today, really difficult things to get across. So part of my job was to find real people whose lives would be impacted by different aspects of the legislation. So for example, in the assault weapons ban, you got to try to find someone whose life was critically altered by the existence of an assault weapon, and they would speak alongside the president in his remarks. Or an ex-con who went through a drug treatment program and therefore was able to cut his likelihood of going back to prison because he got the drug treatment that he needed when he was in prison, which was one of the aspects of the bill. And things like a mother whose child was killed in a drive-by shooting when we were talking about urban violence. So all of these things, I found these people and I searched out these stories and got them to speak. And it was incredibly effective to personalize these issues and to talk about whose lives would change by it because of it. So, but the problem was, like any sort of, dream job, is that I always saw things very visually. And I was always like, God, if I could just, I wasn't a filmmaker yet. So I was like, if I could just give like a little bit deeper story, like one of the things we were trying to pass was a midnight basketball program. And I thought, this is incredible. These cops are playing basketball at midnight with at-risk youth, bridging a terrible divide between these communities. And I just desperately wanted to show that. So as you can imagine how the story went, I quit my job, that was interesting too. And I moved to New York and I became a television producer and learned all of the sort of different sides of the business that would help me tell things visually. And then I moved back to Washington and started Stone Soup. But the thing about it is there are, there's a lot to be said about kind of doing this in a way that's effective. And you can do this poorly. We talk a lot about the power of one. Does anybody know this? Has anybody heard of this, the power of one? Yeah, where there's exhaustive research on when you throw statistics at people and when you get like overwhelming, genocide numbers or poverty or hunger numbers, it's really hard as human beings. By nature, we want to care, but it's very difficult to. So, for example, in the district, 84% of children in certain parts of the city are growing up without a father in the home. And only 38% of African American men are graduating from high school. And by the way, those statistics are linked. So that feels really overwhelming to me. If I care about that issue, I don't really know where to begin. That's a tangled web of issues. But here's Jamal. I took this photograph of a young boy that I met who's in a program called Life Pieces to Masterpieces, some of you might know. And once you learn about Jamal, and once you find out that he's in this program that has a male mentoring aspect of it, and that they are very much equipping him to stay in school, they do homework help and all kinds of things, then you start to care. Then you start to feel like this is manageable, because you know what, we can help him. He becomes part of the solution. And this is part of our methodology at Stone Soup Films, which is that you need to do this in a way that is accessible to people, that brings people in. So we have 3 major philosophies. One is go deep rather than wide. So I don't really want to know how the sausage is made. I'm actually really bossy and opinionated. We go in and we're like, I don't care about your programs. I don't care all about your statistics and all of your programs. I really would like to know more about Jamal. I want to know what his life was like before he came in contact with that organization, and what is his life like now? And what is his house like? What is his room like? I'd like to see his mother. This is a way we humanize and understand and really get to understand people who otherwise we would probably never meet. Another one, show vulnerability and imperfections. This is a very, very knowledgeable field of people that we're appealing to. So I can't watch another piece about a child of a drug-addicted mother who is now at Harvard. I can't do it, no. It's just like, it's gonna make me ill. I want to know, and I want to respect the fact that making a small change, taking a child who might have dropped out of high school and getting them to stay there, is a huge achievement. So I want to show the imperfections. I don't want to insult the person who might be supporting that organization. And then the last one, if you take anything away from this, it's know your audience. And this applies to many industries. Know your audience. Know your audience's attention span. A lot of content is now being consumed mobile. So we are mindful of the fact that you have to know that your audience is not going to be able to have 15 minutes to do that. They're going to be maybe at the bus stop and maybe they have 2 minutes. So you want to feed it to them that way. Know your audience's aptitude. How much do they really know about this community? You know, you can become very cynical until you try to figure out sort of how can you really get into the hearts and minds of people. So we were recently partnered with an organization called Hope House, which was started by Carol Fennelly, who some of you might know, whose husband, Mitch Snyder, was a very big hunger activist here. So Carol Fennelly runs camps inside maximum security prisons to reconnect children with their incarcerated fathers. There's a lot of programs for mothers out there, but not a lot of programs for fathers. And if you may remember, the statistics are quite bleak for children being connected to their fathers. So, okay, really? There are so many reasons why that is just a horrible idea, right? Why would you take a child into a prison? That's incredibly unsafe. Why would you expose a child to the shame of having to say, you know, here is my father and he's in jail and they've got to go through the metal detector? Are these guys good fathers? You know, they are, you know, they made really crappy choices. So, you know, is that a healthy thing? So once you start to know your audience and anticipate all the reasons why that would be a bad idea and you wouldn't care, then you can make a piece that refutes all of those one by one. And I want to show you a short blog that we made, hopefully, that will illustrate what I'm talking about. This is a video blog that we made about this program. There's a longer piece that goes with it. So this is the shorter piece out of respect for your time. So hopefully we can hear it. Can everybody read that?
A lot of guys that see their children in this program have never met their kids, for one, or haven't seen their kids for many years. I hadn't seen my son since he was about 1 year old when I was incarcerated. So when we met for the first time, he was 11 years old at the first camp. You know, since then, me and my son have built a bond that's going to last a lifetime. At his age is when I started going down the wrong path. At a very young age, using drugs and alcohol is what led me to prison. You don't ever want your children to repeat the mistakes that you've made.
Every time I come here, it's just always so exciting because I get to see my father and have so much fun with him. When I'm out, like down where I live, I'm just hoping he stays out of trouble so I can see him the next year. He works an entire year to be good in prison so he can actually see me for 25 hours in camp.
I can't express to you how much it means to me to spend this time with my son, and this is something that we'll take with us the rest of our lives.
It's me who keeps him going in prison.
He's trying to do good out there, and I'm trying to do good in here. Our ultimate goal is to get back together in this lifetime, no matter how long it may take. You know, I'm incarcerated with life plus 40 years consecutive on first-degree murder charge. So it's a very serious situation, and you know, it's something that I wish had never happened. And I made a promise to him that if I ever get out, that I would never use a drug or alcohol again because I never want to leave his side again. That's what this program does. It gives you that drive to do better, that desire to do something positive with your life. You know, this is what I'm fighting for, is to be with my son, no matter how old I am when I get there. I know that I've done as much as I could right now, up to this point, to be a father from behind bars.
Next year. So the point is really not, you don't want to feel sorry for them. You want to educate people and understand why a program like this is important, and you want to make a connection. It's impossible. I mean, unless you're inside that prison, you don't really understand the magic of what goes on there. So the head of this organization used our film in a conference of wardens who are interested in prisoner behavior and control, and now the entire state of California is adopting this program inside camps. So to have camps inside their prison system. So this is really exciting, and I believe there is an enormous potential, more than ever, because I mean, everyone here, in the previous speaker, you all held up your cell phones. Everyone has the ability to do that. And it's the kind of thing where, yeah, you can, there is a space and an appropriate space for Grumpy Cat and for, you know, my kale scramble and all of that. There is a space for that. But there also is an enormous potential out there. So I want to read this quote that RFK said in the same year that I was born, to come full circle, where he says, "Each time someone stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, they send forth a tiny ripple of hope. And those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance." And I just want you all to think about that now, more than ever, you could document the random act of kindness, an amazing art exhibit that you saw, the person who you walk by on your way to work who's living on the street. Maybe you could find a little bit of story in there. Somebody who's doing something, your cool neighbor who works at a nonprofit down the street. Now more than ever, you guys could be that ripple. So thank you.